Okay, so this video we're going to talk about the first skill of digital, and I'm going to draw a quick analogy here. So you probably remember this guy. So his name is E Honda from Street Fighters, and he's known as the 100 hand slap guy. If you remember his one move, this is basically a really OP move. Let me show you a quick video here.
You can do it, man. You can do it.
Round three, fight!
Okay, okay. Good start. No, just run back. Run back. Let's go forward a bit. Yeah. Run.
Yeah, you get the idea. So essentially, with one move, he's able to get really, really far. Or I should say, you can get really far with this character. So this move is super OP. And you might not be able to win the entire game, but I will say you can get very, very far. So, what is the digital marketing equivalent of E Honda's 100 hand skill? Well, it's the ability to consistently come up with deadly video ad hooks. The reason why I say this is because if the hook doesn't work, then nothing else matters. Like nobody's going to consume the rest of your copy or the rest of the content or the advertisement, right? And the inverse of that is that once this skill is learned, you can predictably catch attention, and therefore everything else becomes a lot more forgiving. Not to go into the technicals, but once you have the ability of creating deadly, let's say, ad hooks at will, you'll be able to get data coming in, which will allow you to make upgrades or make improvements to the rest of your ad. Inversely, without that data, you can't do anything. So it all starts with a deadly hook. In addition, it's a transferable skill, so you can actually bring it into organic content. And once you implement the deadly hooks to organic content, then it's more likely to get picked up by the algorithm. And also, it translates into static ads and also even text posts. So, what's usually the problem with coming up with hooks is that most people just copy other competitors and they just rip their hooks. So that's probably not the best way because you're not self sufficient and you probably won't scale by using this method. Although I will say it works in the short term. So instead of doing that, the solution is this. You want to build up a system for printing out deadly hooks. And the high level, it kind of looks like this. So you have your input on this side. You want to collect the patterns. And then from there, from the patterns, you want to identify the ones that fit what you are trying to, the ad that you're trying to create. And then you want to create variations. And then you want to optimize and trim. So let's actually look at the key concept in this case for coming up with deadly hooks. So here are three key principles to keep in mind before we get into the action steps and take a look at the examples. So key principles. The first one is you want to borrow a format that the brain already responds to. So, said differently, you don't want to be inventing and writing from scratch. I think this is probably the most important thing. So, you're not just copying straight out, but rather you are borrowing formats that's already proven. All right. And the second thing is that you want to create enough tension with the hook, or you want to create enough curiosity so scrolling away feels like a loss. So this is something that is an addition. So you want to make sure that you have enough information in the hook so it creates tension and also it creates curiosity. So scrolling away feels like a loss. The third one is the inverse of that. You want to actually strip out anything that competes with this feeling, which is number two here, which is this feeling. All right. So these two are actually kind of like counterweights to one another. And it's important to keep that in mind. So I know it sounds super conceptual. So let's actually get started with step number one. So step number one here is how we set up the foundation. So we want to create a swipe file. And this is the act of collecting this, creating this hook inspo collection system. So how do we do this? Well, first of all, you want to identify organic content channels or accounts in your industry. In addition to that, you want to look at adjacent topics content. You want to watch the content and you want to find the compelling hooks. At least this is what we do, right? So scroll through the profiles, or you can just scroll through the feed, and you want to save content with high share counts and comment counts. Essentially, anything that catches your eye. Let's take a look at an example. So we are in the hair product niche, right? So the product in this case is this hair thickening styling product for men with fine hair. So these guys are not necessarily thinning out, but rather they have fine hair and their scalp shows through, and they're trying to create a look that's a little bit fuller so they can look more youthful and feel more confident. So in this case, the adjacent topics are things like men's apparel, men's skincare, men's fitness, looks maxing, and men's lifestyle. So let's take a look at some content with high number of share counts and also comment counts. So this one is from looks maxing.
For day 30 of Looks Maxing for an entire year, we're eyebrow maxing. Eyebrows are surprisingly important. Jesse Eisenberg looks completely different with thicker eyebrows.
So that is the hook. All right. So it basically starts off with something like really close up and shocking, and then it transitions into talking about celebrities and showing proof of the previous statement. This is super powerful. So the next one, this one is quite different. This one is for skincare. So actually just looks like this. All right. So it says acne face map, and then it shows you all the different parts of the face. Okay, and then the third one, this one is men's apparel.
That's a beater. This is a tank top. Gotta understand the difference. Because if you care about looking good with a tank top outside of the gym, this is gonna be more your speed. That's like
So this one is actually an ad, and this is basically comparing a tank versus a beater. And this one is from Haas. So for men's apparel, there's actually a lot of inspos that we can grab. All right, so some notes here. This is a recurring initiative, so it's not something that's one off. It's not one and done. Basically, you're building up this big swipe file that you can tap into in the future when you're ready to get started with writing out hooks. All right, so this is something that you can consider as an asset. So you want to be building it, and you want to essentially spend some time each week, or maybe even each day, building on this so-called swipe file. And at this point, you want to go for volume. Don't be too critical, and don't try to so-called contextualize or pattern match with your topic just yet. You want to go for volume. And if you're working in a team, then you can definitely crowdsource and get everyone to do it at the same time or on their own time, and share the findings in a Slack group or Discord. So this allows you to get a broader or higher volume, I should say. And lastly, you can use software to assist. There are many different softwares out there. All right, so once you have that, the next step is to identify the top hook formats to model after. So the way for you to determine the formats to model after is, first thing, you want to identify the angles of the ad that you're trying to write for, right? So if you haven't looked or watched the tutorial on coming up with angles, you will probably want to check that out. But it's important for you to start with an angle so you know what to look for as you're going through your inspos here, right? So you want to identify the angle. I'll give some examples later on, but you want to identify the angle, and from there you want to identify the formats that you've collected from step number 1 that could easily be contextualized to present the ad message, present the angle. All right. So there are different ways to match and to so-called pattern match and contextualize. These are the 10 that I usually look at, although this is largely not conscious anymore. When I look at, let's say, hook format, I can easily notice how it can be contextualized to the ad that I'm writing for. But in the beginning, you want to get familiar with this, and it will become easier and easier over time. So I'm just going to go through these really quickly. So first thing is for this domain, what is the outcome that the customer is looking for? Second thing is, in the domain, what is the pain point? And then what have they tried in the past, which is the failed solutions and failed with, obviously. And the fourth thing is, what are their buying objections preventing them from making an additional or the next purchase? The desired features that they have for ideal product, the dog whistles and call outs. So this one is a little bit more sophisticated. This is essentially the titles or some of the signals or words that only your target customers will recognize and respond to. All right. So think of these as insider words or insider names for your target customers. The next one is buying triggers. So these are basically external events or specific events in the customer's lives that activate them into buying mode. All right. Next thing is familiar promises. So what are your competitors saying to them? Progress markers. So how do they measure making progress or lack of progress? And the last thing is key stakes. So what is at stake within this domain, whatever domain you're talking about. So let's take a look at some examples. So for this first one, I took the hook for the looks maxing one. All right. So essentially is day 30 of 365 days of looks maxing to see how much of it is BS. So for me, what I did was I actually changed it for the fine hair topic, right? So day 30 of 365 days of hair maxing to rebuild my confidence. And then for this one, I can obviously show the guy touching his hair or looking in the mirror and fixing up his hair. So related to that, the next one, this one is for the men's apparel. So tank versus beater is kind of like the hook. And for me to contextualize, I can say pomade versus volume powder, and say that's pomade and this is volume powder. So if you remember this one right here.
That's a beater. This is a tank top.
Right. So that's the hook. Okay. So you can see how you can contextualize and essentially pattern match across these different vectors. All right. So let's talk about troubleshooting. Usually when we have a hard time pattern matching, it's because we don't understand the customers well enough. And essentially we want to go back into research to understand the customers better and understand these different dimensions better, which will allow us a much easier time to pattern match and come up with compelling hooks. All right, so let's get to number 3. So as you know, hooks are important, and creating variations of the hooks is also quite important. And in this case, what we're going to do is we're just going to use a pretty simple method to generate variations for the hook, the original hook that we've come up with from step number 2. The way I think about this, these 5 dimensions, or at least these 5 prompts, is that it's a very simple, I guess, set of prompts for generating curiosity and or tension around the topic. And these are the things that will allow the viewer to actually become interested and engage with the content or the ad. So let me just show you some examples, right? Actually, I'll talk through these. So these are key moments, breaking belief. You want to turn it into a question or just make it more, you want to push on the curiosity button, so to speak. The next one is problem call out. So call out the customer's problem related to the topic, the domain. And then the last one is benefit promising. So let's take a look. This example is from before. So day 30 of 365 days of hair maxing. Actually, I think this is not the best. Let's do this. So day 30 of 365 of hair maxing to rebuild my confidence. And basically the benefit promising spin for this one would be something to the effect of 365. Let me do this. So day 30 of 365 of hair maxing. Today we're going to see if I can get the Ryan Gosling look. All right. So that's the benefit promising. It's essentially talking about, it's implying that if you watch the piece of content or watch the ad, you're going to learn how to get the Ryan Gosling look. The next one is day 30 of 365 of hair maxing. If you have shitty hair genes like me, you're going to want to stick around for this one. So this is problem call out. And obviously it's going to showcase visually the hair type that the target customers can relate to. So it's going to be like the fine hair type. All right. The next thing is belief breaking. So for this one, day 30 of 365 of hair maxing. Today, I discover I don't need hairspray to hold my hair up all day. So this is breaking a common belief that for guys with fine hair, that they need a bunch of hairspray to hold up their hair. Let's move on to step number 4, which is optimize. So there are 2 separate steps. I broke it apart because they're both important, but as you become more familiar with the process, you kind of will start to do this unconsciously. So it might merge into just one instinctive step. All right, that being said, what you want to do is you want to optimize the hook first. So there are probably ways for you to make the hook even more compelling. And the idea is not to simply add more, but rather make it better. So that's just a quick preface, but we're going to address that later on. So the first thing for optimization is you want to use news values. This is probably the easiest handful of so-called tactics that you can use to just make a hook more compelling. So this is from journalism, and I'm just going to run through these different vectors. So recency, make the hook related to or sound like it's something that is more recent. Emotional, so add an emotional factor to it. Relevancy, so more relevant to the target customer. Celebrity, related to to a celebrity or more. The next thing is proximity. So in the event that the target customers, they live in New York, then you want to talk about how this event is related to New York. Conflict, so some sort of conflict between two parties. Unusual, so something weird. Ongoing is essentially talking about how, like right now, our example is day 30 of 365, right? So it means that the event is still ongoing, as an example. So next thing is authority and credibility. So you want to imply that there's that the piece of information has authority or credibility, or the presenter is someone who has authority or credibility. The next one is proof factor. All right, so let's take a look at an example, right? So I'm going to take a step back. So without the news values, it might look like this. This might be the hook. So hair maxing guide, how to style your fine hair, with news value. So day 30 of 365. So remember, this is the ongoing aspect. So day 30 of 365 of hair maxing. Today, we're going to see if I can get the Ryan Gosling look. So Ryan Gosling is, of course, the celebrity. All right, so as you can see, if we started off with this and then we optimized it with the 2, let's call them tactics, then this becomes a lot more interesting. So Ryan Gosling, 365. All right, the next part, this one is context setting. So this is not something you'll always do, but I just want to mention that some people create hooks that are based on gimmicks. So gimmicks might be simply turning the image upside down or placing a fake hair in the middle of a screen. So people think that there's a piece of hair on their screen. So those are gimmicks. So that might stop the scroll, but it won't hold the attention. So instead of just using gimmicks, you want to make sure that it actually, it retains the viewer. And one good way to do that is to set context. So you want to provide something that's more specific after you hook, and or you can zone in on the benefits that the viewer can expect if they stick around. So as an example, this is, so hair maxing for guys might be like the first part of this hook, but then setting the context, you can follow that up with, this is the 30-second hack to make fine hair go from this to this. So this is going to be something visual that shows us, that serves as a piece of proof. I'm kicking myself for not learning about this sooner. So this is something that's more emotional. So this is all context. All right. So this sets up the expectation for what the viewer can expect to get if they stick around. Okay, so essentially, setting context will allow you to not just hook, but retain the viewer. So let me zoom out for 1 second. So this might seem like it's all addition, which it kind of is. And this is this will put us into a dangerous territory because it's not just about adding more, because more will typically lead to complexity. And there's only so many pieces of additional or new information that we can provide the viewer before they blow up. So what we want to do at this point then is go to step 2, or I should say 4.2, where we start to trim. All right, so the concept here is perfection is when there's nothing left to remove. And the way that you do this is just through these pretty basic tactics, I'd say. So combining words together, you want to see if you can simply just combine words or just cut words, even if it makes the sentence incomplete. That's totally okay, because communication in this case is all about just delivering the idea instead of being perfect with the sentences and grammar. So combine words, cut words. And another powerful tip for beginners is you want to show whenever possible instead of simply telling. So you might be able to just cut the hook down from, let's say, 3 sentences into like 3 words if you just show what you're trying to show or communicate with visual. All right, so it might be a split screen, it might be some sort of a graphic, it might be some sort of a infographic. So use the visual elements for you to actually communicate the idea instead of simply just using like full-on sentences. That will allow you to shorten the time it takes for you to communicate the idea and quite possibly simplify the hook by quite a bit. And last thing is just remove any distractions, visual, auditory. You get the idea. Okay, and the last thing is make sure it's not too form and also not too familiar. So Maya is the concept, most advanced yet acceptable. It came from design, so something that's too familiar is on the left, too novel is on the right, in the middle is perfectly perfect. Well, it's it's perfect. And let's take a look at the Airbnb logo. So the left is too basic, too abstract on the right, and then the middle is perfect. And same with the glasses. As mentioned before, as you become more familiar with this process, 4.1 and 4.2 will probably collapse into just one action. So you'll expand and then simplify and trim. Cool, and that's basically it. So let's now take a look at some examples. I have 3 ads here. So I found 2 of the original. So this one is this style is basically responding to a tweet. So let's take a look. So it's basically just pointing to a tweet. So we changed this one just a little bit, but you'll probably be able to see the effect.
You're saying your head is flat. It says flat AF.
김치찌개 김치 먹는 한국인.
It said your head is flat.
김치찌개
Yeah, what you just saw.
So that hook actually is very powerful. I think it's at a 50-something hook rate because the viewer wants to kind of understand what is going on with the interaction in the tweet. So let's take a look at the next one. All right, so that one basically says if you have a big forehead, and then it shows the very compelling first scene. All right, so we did something similar like this. All right, so basically it says, let's see if I can get the Ryan Gosling hairstyle. So as you can see, it's not exactly the same, but the feel is very similar, and we also use the same soundtrack. So that one is a little stepping into the danger zone because it's a trademarked, or at least it's a popular song, but so far it's been okay. All right, And let's take a look at the last one. So I couldn't find the original ad for this, but I'll just play the model, the ad that we came up with after modeling the original ad. This sucks. This is good. This sucks. This is good. This sucks. This is good. This is how your fine hair should look. All right, so that's the hook, and as you can probably guess, it's actually pretty compelling, and the hook rate I think was at like 40% so quite high. And we originally got this from an apparel company. Okay, so that's basically it. This is the entire process for you to set up a system that allows you to come up with deadly hooks on command.